They say you can't deny a dying man his last wish. But what if that wish is to marry your girlfriend? I never expected my life to become this twisted mess of obligation and betrayal. One minute, I was standing next to Ethan, my older brother, my childhood hero, watching football, drinking beer, and laughing about how unapproachable Arya was. The next, I was watching him wither away in a hospital bed, his once mighty body eaten alive by cancer, his voice now a shadow but still commanding. And then he said it. I want to marry Arya before I die. He looked me straight in the eye. No jokes, no stutters, just the plea of a man whose days were numbered. I froze. Not because I didn't love my brother, I did, but because Arya wasn't some standing girlfriend. She was mine. Fiercely mine. A tempest in Silcarest to the Vellaro estate, 9th-dan black belt, fluent in 3 languages and emotionally fluent in none. Loving her was like holding fire between your palms and hoping not to burn. And I had burned. Oh, I had, but I'd never let go. But Ethan was dying. And she said yes, just like that. Now here I am. 1 week after their wedding, his funeral, barely cold in Arya, is back in my house. Smiling. Unbothered. Wearing the diamond band Ethan put on her finger like it was some fashion accessory. I don't know what scares me, Mareth, that I let this happen, or that I'm beginning to suspect she liked it. And maybe, just maybe, so did I. Ethan was always the golden one. 4 years older than me, he was the kind of brother who made teachers sigh wistfully and neighbors ask, "Why can't you be more like him?" Captain of every team, full ride to Stanford. The type of guy who didn't walk, he strode. And people followed. Including me. We weren't just brothers. We were a unit. Until I turned 23 and met Arya Vellaro. I first saw her at a corporate gala our father had dragged us to. Arya was standing alone, drink in hand, in a blood-red dress that made her look like she was born to conquer empires. Everyone noticed hair, but no one dared approach. Not until me. And she didn't look away. She didn't smile either. She just said, "You're brave," and walked off. I spent the next month trying to find her name. Arya was an heiress to a shipping empire, born with wealth but raised with knives. Her father had trained her in martial arts, since she could wazet a woman with money needed muscle more than manners. She once knocked out a drunken investor for grabbing her wrist. Didn't blink. That was Arya elegant chaos. I fell for her hard, and strangely, she didn't push me away. She challenged me, tested me, broke me down and rebuilt me in the image she found acceptable. Some said she was toxic. I called her honest. Ethan met her 6 months into our relationship. He was instantly intrigued. Who wouldn't be? He liked control, and she was the one thing he couldn't quite dominate. But he respected her, maybe even admired her. They had an odd chemistry. Sparring partners in conversation. Never flirtatious at least not to my eyes. But I noticed things. The way his gaze lingered, the smirk she gave when he corrected her. Still, I trusted them both. Until the diagnosis. Pancreatic cancer, stage the 4th. The invincible man became a skeleton in weeks. I was there for every needle, every drop of morphine. Arya came sometimes, not always. She hated hospitals. Said they smelled like loss. In one of his clearer moments, Ethan told me, "Don't let her live in regret." I thought he meant to stay by her side. I didn't know he meant to take his place. Or maybe I did, and I just pretended not to. When he asked to marry her, I laughed at first. I genuinely thought he was joking. He wasn't. And when I told Arya, bracing for outrage, she didn't even hesitate. "If that's what he wants, I'll do it," she said flatly, like it was business, like it didn't matter. But I saw something flicker in her eyes just for a moment. Pity? Gratitude? No. Hunger. And still, I said yes. The wedding was held in Ethan's hospital room. A nurse officiated. A borrowed tux hung on his gaunt frame like it belonged to someone else. Arya wore a white pantsuit, simple, sharp, unbothered. Her hair was slicked back, not a strand out of place. No makeup. No smile. I, Ethan Samuel Clark, take you, Arya Villarod. His voice trembled, but his eyes stayed locked on hers. I stood behind the camera, filming, choking on the absurdity of it all. She said the vows like she was reading aloud from a contract. No trembling, no hesitation, no emotion. When it ended, he kissed her hand too weak to reach her cheek. Then he whispered something to her that I couldn't hear. She didn't flinch, just nodded once. He died that night. I found him early the next morning, hand still gripping the corner of her wedding photo like it was a lifeline. I sat beside him, numb, staring at the ring on Arya's finger as she stood silently behind me, arms crossed. He got what he wanted, she said quietly. I looked up at her. Did you? She didn't answer, just left the room. A week later, the funeral came and went. Arya didn't cry. She didn't even bring flowers. Just stood beside me in black, like a statue carved from contempt and marble. That night, I came home from the wake and found her in my kitchen, barefoot, sipping red wine. You didn't ask me to leave, she said, swirling the glass. It's still your house, I replied. It was always yours, and that was the moment. Not the wedding, not the funeral, not the wine in her hand. It was the way she looked at me like the story was just beginning. Like Ethan had been the prologue, and she was already writing chapter 1, and I like a fool let her. At first we tiptoed around each other, two ghosts haunting the same house. Arya moved back in without ceremony. No talk of leases or timelines. She simply unpacked her suitcase and filled the closet beside mine again, as if Ethan's funeral had sealed something between us that neither of us was brave or cruel enough to name. She didn't act like a widow. She didn't act like my girlfriend either. She acted like Arya, unapologetically blunt, maddeningly graceful, and increasingly unreadable. I'm not grieving, she said over breakfast one morning, slicing through an orange with military precision. I'm adjusting. To what? I asked. She looked up, expression flat. To be your dead brother's wife and your ex-girlfriend at the same time. I stared at her, waiting for some flicker of sarcasm or guilt. There was none. She popped a slice into her mouth and walked away. That was Arya in a nutshell, unpredictable and unapologetic. But something had shifted. She was more detached, almost clinical. We didn't sleep together. We didn't even sit on the same couch. But she lingered, always nearby, always watching. And then came the training. I'd forgotten how much time she used to spend at the home gym. Hours every day, perfecting strikes, routines, sparring with ghosts. But now it was obsessive. She trained harder, faster, sweat dripping off her like rage escaping her pores. One night, I walked in on her mid-kata, barefoot on the mat, hair undone, breath ragged. She didn't stop. Just locked eyes with me and kept going, her movements like a dance with violence. Ethan used to watch me too, she said between strikes. I flinched. Was that supposed to make me feel something? She shrugged. I never said it was about you. It was like that for weeks-dense silence, probing comments, memories laced with barbs. She'd drop Ethan's name casually, like seasoning on a wound. Once, while drinking from his favorite mug, she murmured, Funny how the things we touch outlive us. What do you want, Arya? I snapped. She didn't hesitate. To be remembered. That's when I realized. This wasn't grief. It was a strategy. Arya wasn't mourning Ethan. She was absorbing him, his legacy, his connections, even his last request. And somewhere in the middle of it all, I had become part of her inheritance. She began attending his board meetings. Not as a guest d'honneur. She came as his widow, his next of kin, armed with cold charm and silent fury. The executives, mostly aging men, didn't know how to handle her. One tried to talk over her in a meeting. She broke his pen in half without blinking. I watched from the sidelines, half impressed, half terrified. She was using Ethan's name like a crowbar, prying open doors that had once been closed to her. And then, the rumors started. At first, there were whispers, harmless speculation about the unusual marriage, about the timing, about how Arya had gained full access to Ethan's estate within a week of his death. But then one board member, an old family friend of ours, took me aside at a gala. "Be careful, Nathan," he said. "You're not the first Clark she's undone." That night, I confronted her. "You knew this would happen," I said. "You married him, and now you've inherited everything. His name, his legacy, his power." She didn't deny it. "I gave him peace," she said simply. "And I gave you freedom." "Freedom?" I laughed bitterly. "You think I'm free? I live with the woman who stood over my brother's deathbed wearing white, kissed him, and then walked into my house like nothing happened." Her voice dropped, slow and lethal. "You let me." I stared at her, words stuck in my throat. "You didn't stop me," she continued. "You watched it unfold, Nathan, so don't pretend you're some innocent bystander. You wanted this too." And that was the worst part. She was right. Somewhere, beneath the guilt and the rage, a dark part of me had wanted her to say yes. Had wanted her to belong to me again, even if it meant letting Ethan have her first. Even if it meant sharing her with the ghost. The lines between us were no longer blurred. They were sharpened into weapons, and neither of us had any intention of disarming. I was going through Ethan's things late one night, hoping to find something closure, a letter, maybe some answer for why he'd asked me to give her up for him. Instead, I found the journal. Tucked beneath a false panel in his desk drawer, it was leather-bound and cracked with age. Ethan wasn't the journaling type, or so I thought. But this one, it started 6 months before his diagnosis. And every page was about her. About Arya. It wasn't admiration. It was an obsession. Page after page, he detailed every encounter with her. Her laugh, her sarcasm, how she moved when she sparred. How he dreamed about her. How he imagined stealing her not from me, but for himself. He wrote of his frustration, of knowing she would never choose him. "She doesn't see me," he scribbled in one entry. "She only sees Nathan, but I'll make her look." And then, weeks before his diagnosis, a final entry stood out like a bullet in a chamber. "If death is the only way to take her from him, then I'll make death mean something." I dropped the book. The wedding, his last request, the way he looked at her. It wasn't about peace, it was a move in the oldest game of all. Ethan hadn't just wanted Arya to comfort him. He wanted to brand her, to have her in a way I never truly did. And he knew she wouldn't say no to a dying man. He used his death to take her from me. But what if she knew? What if she played along? That night, I looked at Arya differently. And for the first time, I realized I might not be the only one haunted in this house. After I read Ethan's journal, I couldn't sleep. I watched Arya from the shadows of our shared home, trying to decipher her every move. Did she know? Was she complicit? Or was she just another pawn in Ethan's final game? But Arya didn't act like someone carrying guilt. She didn't cry. She didn't rage. She sharpened knives in the kitchen while listening to Chopin. She sparred in the basement gym like her opponent was invisible. She kissed me once just, once and pulled away like it meant nothing. Like I meant nothing. Yet I couldn't confront her. Not yet. So I tested her instead. I began talking about Ethan, more subtle references to things from the journal only he and I should know. I told her he had confessed things to me near the end. Things about his feelings for her. She didn't flinch. "Everyone wants something they can't have," she said. "Even gods." The next day, I found the journal missing. I didn't ask. She didn't offer. But I knew. That night, she cooked. A rare event. She laid the table, poured wine, and lit candles like it was our anniversary. She wore the same white silk robe she'd worn the night after Ethan's funeral. I almost didn't sit, but curiosity is its own hunger. "To Ethan," she said, raising her glass. "To Ethan," I echoed, cautiously. We ate in silence until she set her fork down and looked at me across the flickering flame. "You think I'm the villain," she said. "But I'm not. You married my brother," he asked. "You said yes. You let me." The same argument, always circling the same black hole. I found his journal, I said finally. Her lips twitched. Not a surprise or resignation. Of course you did. You knew? I suspected. He was never subtle. Then why go along with it? She tilted her head, eyes gleaming with something dangerous. Because dying men deserve peace, and so do the living. I stared at her, the rage and confusion inside me calcifying into something colder. That wasn't peace. That was possession. Do you think I didn't know that? She snapped suddenly. Do you think I couldn't see the way he looked at me? Like I was his salvation? He was dying, Nathan. And dying men don't ask for things they take. So you gave in out of pity? No, she said quietly. Out of power. That stopped me. She stood and walked around the table, placing her hands on my shoulders. Ethan was the hero. You were the shadow. But I saw you first. And I chose you first. Then why sleep in his bed? She leaned closer, because sometimes to burn a ghost, you have to let it possess you first. I stood, shoving the chair back. You think in metaphors. I live with consequences, then face them. Are we done playing house? She paused. We never were. We were playing war. The next day she didn't come home. No note. No call. Just absence. A week passed. I checked her accounts empty. Her phone disconnected. Even her training studio was shuttered. She'd vanished. And with her, something inside me collapsed. I hated her. I loved her. I missed her. Ethan's ghost whispered through every corner of the house, every memory twisted by his final move. He hadn't just stolen her for a day, he'd planted a fracture between us so deep it could never fully heal. And now, she'd walked away. I thought it was over until the letter arrived. Mailed from an old Valaro property near the coast. No return address. Just 2 lines. You're not free until you come for me. If you don't, he wins. No name. No signature. But I knew the handwriting. And I knew the challenge. I drove 6 hours straight down winding roads to the cliffs. The property was abandoned, storm-damaged, wild with weeds. But she was there barefoot on the veranda, wind tearing through her hair, dressed in black like she'd been waiting for a funeral that wouldn't end. I thought you'd take longer, she said. I didn't answer. Just stepped inside, rain soaking my collar. I left so you could decide. Decide what? If it was me you hated, or the version of yourself you became to keep me. I closed the distance between us slowly, deliberately. I hated both. And now, I'm still deciding. She nodded, unsurprised. I kept the ring, she said. The one Ethan gave me. Why? To remind myself that even gods die. We stood there for a long time, 2 survivors of the same explosion. Finally, I asked, what happens now? She looked at me, expression unreadable. Now you choose. Stay, and we burn it all down together. Or leave, and let his ghost live between us forever. I didn't move. Because part of me knew no matter what I chose, the war wasn't over. And I didn't want it to be. The storm outside mirrored the one inside me. Aria stood by the old fireplace, her fingers trailing the edge of the mantel like she was drawing lines in ash. I stayed by the door, soaked from rain and silence, watching her move like she owned the air. You always wanted control, I said quietly, even when you were pretending to surrender. She turned. You think I wanted to be owned? By him? By you? No. But I think you wanted to choose who you let control you. And Ethan didn't give you that choice. He weaponized his death. She flinched, almost imperceptibly. I stepped forward. You let him. You stood there, in white, and made a dying man feel like he'd won. Even though you and I both know he didn't. Her voice cracked, low and sharp. You don't understand. Then explain it. Because I don't know what the hell this is anymore, us. This story. This war you keep dragging me into. She took a breath, steadying herself. He was always going to die, she said. But before he did, he needed to believe he'd left a mark. Not just in the world, but in me. So I gave him that. One day, one performance, so that he wouldn't cling to me in his last breath. My throat tightened. You played the role. I survived it. She walked toward me, slowly, deliberately. You think I'm the villain because I said yes, but the truth is, you're angry because a part of you needed me to say yes, so you didn't have to be the one to say no. That's not true. Yes, it is, she whispered. You wanted him to die happy, and you wanted me to stay. You thought you could have both. She was right, and I hated her for it. You manipulated him, I said. She stepped closer. He manipulated you, and you manipulated me. She stopped, inches from my chest. No, Nathan. I set you free. I laughed bitterly. Free? I've never felt more chained in my life. She reached up, touched the side of my face. Then leave. Walk out that door. Pretend none of this ever happened. I didn't move. Her eyes softened. You think I wanted him? I pitied him. But you? You were the one I feared. Because you saw through me. Because you let me be cruel. Because you stayed. Because I loved you, I said. She nodded. I know. And you still do. That's why this hurts. Tears stunned my eyes, not from sadness, but from truth cutting bone deep. I don't know who I am with you anymore, I confessed. She leaned in, lips just shy of mine. Then, let's find out. It wasn't a kiss. It was a collision years of grief, fury, guilt, and longing exploding between us. We kissed like people who'd survived the war only to crawl back into the trenches, desperate to be wounded again just to feel something. We stumbled backward, hands tangled, mouths feverish. I lifted her onto the table where we once shared Ethan's ghost, sweeping aside wine-stained memories. And then I stopped. She looked up, confused. What is it? I can't do this, I said, breathless. Not like this. Not with everything between us unsaid. Silence fell. Then, slowly, she nodded. Climbed down. Straightened her robe. We stood there, chest to chest, like warriors lowering their weapons. I didn't love him, she whispered, but a part of me needed to honor him, and a part of me hated that you did. We stood in the wreckage of what Ethan left behind and what we chose to build on top of it. I'll always carry him, I said. She met my gaze. So will I. But I carry you too. The rain softened outside. The storm had passed, but the damage remained. We didn't speak again that night. We didn't need to. The war between us wasn't over. But maybe for the first time we weren't fighting against each other. We were fighting the parts of ourselves Ethan left behind. It's been 4 months since that night on the coast. Since we burned through what was left of our ghosts. Arya didn't move back in, not right away. She kept the cliffside house and said she needed space to breathe without history pressing down on her chest. I understood. I needed it too. We started meeting once a week, sometimes for dinner, sometimes just for silence. At first it felt clinical, like we were debriefing a trauma we both barely survived. But over time, the edges softened. Her gaze stopped being a challenge. Mine stopped being a weapon. We talked about Ethan, finally, without accusation. I told her about the journal, what it said, what it revealed about him. She didn't ask to read it. She just listened, then said quietly, he was in love with an idea of me. You were the only one who ever wanted the whole version, ugly parts and all. I didn't respond. I didn't have to. She knew. I asked her once, during a walk along the cliffs, why she said yes to the wedding so easily. Her answer wasn't what I expected. Because I thought it would make me feel powerful, she said. But instead I just felt owned. And afterward, I felt lost. And now? She looked at me, not with fire this time, but something more dangerous truth. Now, I just want to feel real. I realized then that everything she did, every calculated silence, every verbal cut was a defense against vulnerability. Arya had never been loved gently. Not by her father. Not by Ethan. Maybe not even by me. So I started showing up. Not with grand gestures, but small ones. I sent her favorite flowers without a note. I fixed the broken railing on her deck. I trade with her not to win, but to understand. She began to let me in again. Slowly. On her terms. And somehow, that was enough. We don't call it love anymore, not because it isn't, but because what we have now goes beyond it. It's not an obsession. It's not dependent. It's survival. It's two people who have seen each other at their worst and still chose to stay in the room. Ethan's name doesn't come up much these days. When it does, it's a ghost passing through, acknowledged but no longer feared. I kept his journal. Not out of sentiment, but as a reminder, love without truth becomes a weapon. And we've both had enough of being armed. Aria wears the ring sometimes not on her wedding finger, but on a chain around her neck. I asked her why once. She said, "Because it reminds me that even the people who love you can try to own you." She looked at me and added, "But it also reminds me I said no, eventually. We're still finding out who we are apart, together, beyond what Ethan tried to carve out of us. But I know this, whatever war he thought he won, he didn't. We did. Together. They say you can't deny a dying man his last wish. But no one ever warns you what honoring that wish might cost the fractures it can leave behind, the shadows it casts on the living. I let my brother marry the woman I loved. I stood by while she became his widow and, somehow, never stopped being mine. I thought it would be a sacrifice, something noble, maybe even redemptive. It wasn't. It was a war. But in that war, we learned something no one ever teaches you. That love twisted by guilt is not love, it's debt. And debt always comes due. Aria and I paid in full. We are not the same people we were before Ethan's last breath. She's softer in ways you wouldn't see unless you knew where to look. And I've stopped waiting for people to tell me who I'm supposed to be Ethan's shadow, Aria's anchor, the grieving younger brother. I'm just me now. And she's just her. That's more than enough. We still fight sometimes about stupid things, or nothing at all. But now, when we do, we don't fight to win. We fight to stay. That's the difference. Ethan will always be between us. Not as a ghost to be exorcised, but as a scar that reminds us of what we survived, what we chose, what we lost and what we refused to lose again. I once feared I'd lost Aria forever the day she said yes to him. But what I didn't understand then was that she wasn't choosing Ethan. She was choosing to survive. And now, finally, she's chosen to live. With me. Not because she has to, but because we both said yes. This time, with no one dying.